I'm your host, Scary Pops, and everybody loves a good scare. So let's get into it. Anatoly Moskin. He seemed like a smart guy, and according to the Daily Beast, this college professor and Russian journalist, he mastered 13 languages. But he also dubbed himself an expert on cemeteries, a necropolist. He was so fascinated by cemeteries, in fact, that he visited 752 of them in and around his hometown. He would write lengthy reports with titles like Great Walks Around Cemeteries and What the Dead Said, and it would be published in a weekly newspaper called Necrologies. When he was 13, a group of men stopped him and forced him to join a funeral and to kiss the dead 11-year-old girl on the lips. He began writing about the dead and taking detailed notes of each cemetery he visited. He even spent the night in the coffin of a dead person ahead of their funeral. It was when locals found the graves of their loved ones desecrated and dug up in 2009. Until 2011, nobody had an inkling who the culprit was in this bizarre horror story. And the police heard that the graves were being desecrated. And following a terrorist attack at the airport, they finally got a break. They found Moskvin painting over the pictures of dead Muslims. And while he wasn't desecrating the bodies themselves, authorities arrested him and began to search his apartment. That's when they realized they stumbled upon a real-life horror story. Countless life-size dolls littered the apartment, which Moskin shared with his parents. The dolls' hands were covered in fabric and makeup covered their faces. It quickly became apparent that these were not inanimate objects. These were, in fact, the mummified corpses of human girls. When police tried to move them, music began to blare, and Moskin had embedded music boxes into the chest cavities of these dolls. A dried human heart and a piece of a gravestone were found in the home as well. The corpses were stuffed with rags, their eye sockets filled with buttons or toe eyes. Moskin said he would watch cartoons with them and that he dug them up because he was lonely. He said his biggest dream was to have children and that he'd been waiting for science to figure out how to revive the dead. In court, he confessed to 44 counts of abusing graves and dead bodies. The mother of Moskin's first victim said that she had her daughter for 10 years and he had her for 9. He was living with the mummified daughter in his bedroom. Psychiatrists claim that his condition is steadily improving, but they have continued to keep him safely removed from society. When young Bobby Dunbar went missing in 1912, the whole country was eager to find him and put an end to the heartbreaking horror story. The 4-year-old from Louisiana vanished into thin air on August 23rd during a trip to Swazi Lake. Leslie and Percy Dunbar, they searched everywhere, but no luck. The police were desperate. They would dissect alligators. They would throw dynamite into the lake. They offered a reward of $6,000, which would be about $160,000 today. All seemed lost until 8 months after Bobby's disappearance. The police arrested a man named William Cantwell Walters on April 13th, 1913, near Columbia, Mississippi. He was traveling with a boy matching Dunbar's description. He claimed the boy was named Bruce Anderson, the son of a woman named Julia Anderson, a field hand and caretaker for his parents. Regardless, the cops forcibly took the kid to the Dunbar home in hopes of reconciling the family with their missing child. The Dunbars, however, they didn't recognize the boy as their own. They said his eyes are too small, and the boy didn't seem to recognize him either, or his brother Alonzo. It was only after Leslie Dunbar saw him a second time and gave him a bath that she celebrated the return of her baby boy, claiming to recognize his moles and scars. But there was another factor to contend with. Julia Anderson, who rushed from North Carolina to Louisiana to get her son back, in order to determine whether the boy really was Julia's son. Remember, these were days before DNA testing. The police showed her the newly found boy as well as 4 other children, but she couldn't pick them out. And so devastated, she gave up and returned home. While the Dunbars were confident they had successfully gotten their son back, but none of it ever sat right with Julia Anderson. It would take nearly a century for the truth to come out, as in 1999, Bobby's granddaughter, Margaret Dunbar Cutright, began researching her family's mysterious past, poring over documents in small-town libraries, historical archives, and courthouses. Her journey was chronicled by the Associated Press in 2004, and again in a 2008 episode of This American Life. When the Associated Press reported the story, Margaret's father, Bob Dunbar Jr., consented to a DNA test. Dunbar Jr.'s DNA was compared to his cousin's, the son of Bobby Dunbar's younger brother. The DNA test would be able to tell them whether their fathers had truly been brothers or whether Bobby was actually Bruce. The results were staggering. Bob Dunbar Jr. was not related by blood to any of the Dunbar family. The returned child all those decades was in fact Bruce Anderson.
I was doing DoorDash late one night, trying to get some extra money for savings. It wasn't too busy, but I was getting a few orders here and there to make it worth my while. A little after 1 a.m., an order came in for a customer 30 minutes away. It was a long drive, but the payout was good enough for me to accept it. I drove to the restaurant, some local Korean place that looked expensive, then started heading to the house. By the end of the route, it started taking me into a pretty bad part of town. I'd been here before with no problems, but as I drove through and looked at all the run-down houses, I started getting uncomfortable. When I got to the address, I parked on the side of the road. It was a very small, old house with a cracked and destroyed driveway. I got out of my car and started walking up to the porch with the bag. Right as I was going to set the bag down, my phone rang.
Hello?
After getting no response, I hung up and quickly finished the delivery and hurried back to my car. As I turned my car on and buckled up, I heard the front door to the house swing open. I looked over and saw a woman waving her arms in the air and running toward my car, screaming at me to wait. It was so bizarre, I was too frozen to react. She ran up to my window and started banging, asking me to help her. I still had no idea what was going on, but I opened the window a crack and asked what she needed. She said her 3-year-old daughter was inside struggling to breathe and that I needed to help her. The woman started going back up the driveway and begged me to come help. Still in a confused state of shock, I got out of my car and started to follow her. But as I did, I noticed her get quiet and less panicky. I started thinking more now that the situation was less chaotic and sudden, and realized how strange this was.
Have you called 911 yet?
I asked, stopping on the driveway. She turned around, and it was like her tears and panic were gone. She said there was no time, and started to very obviously pretend to panic again. It looked more like a crackhead having a mental breakdown, not a worried mother. I immediately ran back to my car as she continued screaming and even ran back down the driveway to the passenger door and started trying to open it. I turned the car back on and reversed as she tried to run in front of my car to come to my side. Once I was clear, I put it in drive and went around her. And in that second that I passed the house again, I saw a large figure standing in the upstairs window, watching the whole thing. As soon as I got out of the neighborhood, I dialed 911 and told them the address and situation. When I got a call back from the police, they told me that the woman had a different story, saying she only came out to give me a cash tip. They also noted that she lived alone with no record of having any kids or adults living with her. This only made me more horrified about the situation, but after talking some more with the officer, it was clear that nothing could be done. There was no proof for either of our stories, and trying to press charges would be a pointless battle. On top of this, the officer seemed tired and not in the mood to deal with anything, but I knew he was right about me not being able to do much, so it was all left as that. In my gut, I know that she was trying to get me inside the house for dark reasons, especially knowing that she had no kids. The scariest part of it, after knowing everything, was seeing that person inside the house watching us, and knowing that he was eerily waiting for me to enter the home.